What's your definition of a broad?
Well, it's kind of a term from the past, so it's, in a nice way, it's a woman, but it used to be, somebody who was more of like a streetwalker or whatever.
True.
But now it's more like we are who we are, and we can embrace it and just be ourselves and just be a glorious broad.
Love that. So, why New York?
Oh, I'm a native. I was born here. I love it. I lived in Northern California for 11 years in the 60s, and I loved it. But I'm a New Yorker. And anything is possible here. You can be who you are, and you don't get reprimanded. You don't get ridiculed. So why would I want to live in Tennessee or Alabama? This is it for me.
So if you were 20 again, knowing what you know now, would you have any do-overs?
No, because I was wise enough and I had parents who embraced me and encouraged me to be who I was. And if I didn't want to go out on New Year's Eve, I wanted to stay home and dress up the dog, they were in agreement with that. And when I went off to college and I didn't date a fraternity boy and I didn't do sex, drugs, and rock and roll, that was embraced too. And I'm happy I followed my inner truth. And when I mentor young women, I encourage them to go deep inside and really find what's truthful for them. And forget about the corporate job, or forget about the cute boyfriend, or forget about the football star. Find what you need to embrace.
Oh, that's so important. Such a key lesson. So how do you deal with your inner critic? Do you have one?
I'm sure, but of course with maturity, it begins to dissipate. And dressing up for me is like a meditation. So my inner critic, with any kind of creative act, whether I'm making stuff or preparing a meal or getting dressed, I find my inner truth. And I have a mantra called the 4 T's. And this is what I try to use with young women. The first one is your truth. And we all know our truth, but our culture pushes it so far down that we don't even know where to find it. So once you tap into that, then you have to trust it, because it's too easy to criticize it and ridicule yourself and say, no, that can't be. And then you have to be tolerant of it. And then you have to embrace it with tenderness and go from there and put it out in the world and give everybody else a space to find their 4 T's and have it be their mantra.
Oh,
Our culture just does not support truthfulness of who we really want to be. They want us all to be corporate, and shop in the fancy stores and buy and look, wear the sneakers that everybody's wearing. No, thank you.
So how has sex changed for you as you've gotten older?
Well, I've never been a sex pot, and it's more about intimacy. And I've probably only been with 5 men in my whole life. I didn't date in college. I did date in graduate school. And a Persian man, which I couldn't tell my father. And it's really more about intimacy and closeness and friendship. And I tell young girls, make friends with someone first. It's not about the lust, because the lust disappears. And one of my partners used to say, I'm falling in like with you. And that meant so much more than falling in love, because that's such a cliche. We don't even know what essence it holds.
So has that shifted a bit? Has that become more pronounced as you've gotten older?
Yeah, well, I think with maturity, you get closer and more trusting. And after you've been through a few relationships, at this point in life, this may be the last one, so it might as well be the most important one.
And I hear that you fell in love later in life, right?
Yeah, at 62.
That gives us hope.
And it really wasn't falling in love. We just would sort of go out and, we met 5 years prior to that, and Stan said, oh, she's very nice, but she looks like a clown. And it's in the movie Advanced Style, and he doesn't deny it. He said, well, what's wrong with the clown? They bring joy to life. And then 5 years later, we saw each other across a crowded room and smiled, and time stood still, as they say.
Oh, I love that. And that really gives hope for anybody who needs this, who needs a companion. Well, I wouldn't say you needed a companion. It
No.
just happened.
Yeah, because I was very busy and I didn't even want to go out or meet anybody. But one friend said, I insist, you at least have to meet him because he's the only person I know who's been reading labels on food since the 60s. So she said, at least you'll hit it off with that, with the quality of how you take care of yourselves and the way you eat. And we both love thrifting, and so that was another link.
So friends, that became other
Start
things.
with friendship.
So how do you avoid having regrets?
Well, you have to stay in the present, and you have to be grateful for what's happening now. And there's no reason to look back because you got here because of everything that came before. And that's important. You have to recognize your journey and know that life is not a beginning and an end, but all the ups and downs that come along. And
That's hard though.
yeah, but you have to embrace it. And, you know, you could choose which fork in the road to take. Because, you know, if you come to a fork in the road, you can't go both ways. You'll split your crotch. So you have to choose one. You can always then take the other fork in the road, but you got to do one at a time and test the water.
So when did that change for you? When did you get that?
I've known that my whole life. Because even when I was in my 20s and I was teaching at a university, and I loved teaching, but I could not relate to the bullshit in academia. And I retired at 35. And people said, you're crazy. How can you give up such an incredible, prestigious job? And I said, I know I'm going to be sick if I stay in this because my gut, I listened to my gut and I said, I'll find the next thing. And so far, I've never had any regrets, never looked back. They invited me to come back to teach 10 years later, only to teach graduate students, no administrative work, and that worked for me. So I always, my birth sign is Cancer, so my center is in my gut, and I've always been able to listen to my gut. I don't listen to my head because that leads me astray. I listen to my gut.
Boy, that is key. That is really key. Now, I'm a neighbor of yours. So I would like to know, how do you live a full life?
I spend a lot of time at home. I spend a lot of time puttering. I spend a lot of time making my art. I spend a lot of time cooking because that gives me peace of mind. I'm not interested in all the stuff that's going on. Do I need to see another gallery show? You know, if a friend is in town, we'll go. But it's not going to change my life. Do I need to see another concert? I can put a wonderful CD on and listen. I love to listen to podcasts. I love to listen to things on healing. And life is full. And I live in the best city in the world, in the best neighborhood in the world. I'm happy just to come out in the park and enjoy the fresh air, farmer's market, and see the beautiful produce, and be with friends. The most important thing is friendship and health. But being with friends keeps you healthy, keeps you satisfied. And that's it. What else is there?
So what's the number one thing you think young women should know about life?
Trust yourself. Go inside. Stan has a wonderful quote by one of the Greek philosophers, I can't remember. Love your life, seek the life you love, and love will find you, or love will seek you. Too many women are desperate. They're online nonstop looking for the right guy. There's no such thing as the right guy on the first profile.
Yes.
You need to get to know them. And like another young friend says, you've got to give them at least 3 dates. And you've got to trust yourself, and you've got to find what's fulfilling to you. It's not about necessarily a partner. You know, people get married, it's lustful, and then they get divorced, and they've got 3 kids, and then they've got all these appendages, and they get married again and have 2 more kids. Just take your time. And having kids is not all that it's cracked up to be. I have none. I don't miss it. I'm not a mother. I'm not a granny. And when they want to call me granny in an interview article, I say, call me witch, bitch, anything, but do not call me granny. It's by choice that I'm not a granny, and I never will be. Thank you very much.
I so love that, and I'm with you.
Oh.
So did you ever have angst about a certain age, turning 30, turning 40, or it has all been easy?
No, there was angst. I'd say 35 is a crucial point. That's when I got divorced, left my job at the university, moved back to New York, and it's like, and who am I and what am I going to do?
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to make art, but how am I going to make a living? You know, I'm going to be alone. Where am I going to live? Okay, I have a sister in New York, so at least, and I have a lot of New York friends. 35, and lately I've been talking to women who are 35, 36, and it does seem to be a turning point. I also lost my mother at 36, so that was a major turning point because she was my best friend.
Yes. 30 was a tough one for me too. Yeah, it's a turning point.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
You know, and then you're seeing 40 and you're supposed to make it by 40. You know, life begins at 40. So, you know, you're measuring it all, but life continues. It's just a journey.
And I think that's what young women has to realize. It continues. 50, 60, 70, reinvention.
And we're in a river, and you have to let the river carry you. You cannot force the river. You know, it's about flow. Water is the most powerful element, so allow it to let you flow.
So before we leave each other, tell me about your aesthetic, this fabulous accessories you have. What are you about?
Well, everything I do is gifted and thrifted. Ari Seth Cohen of Advanced Style gave me that title 12 years ago because I don't shop. Okay, this came from Spark Pretty, which is a wonderful thrift shop on East 9th Street. And I commented once that I loved it. She gave it to me for Christmas that year. So I've had it about 10, 12 years. The tights were given to me about 10 years ago from my good friend Elka, who was my first teacher in textile school at Carnegie Mellon. The necklace I made out of things from Materials for the Arts, where you can go and buy and get anything free in volume. And the rubber parts were given to me by one of my photographers, Denton Taylor, who's also a building engineer, and he finds scraps for me and gave them to me. The bracelet is made from unused leather that somebody in Chicago sent to me, and other scraps, mesh bags. The earrings are made from toilet paper rolls and pieces of copper. Do these have the copper on them? Yeah, copper and twisted paper cord and paint.
I love it. What style!